This week on the Computer Chronicles, part 2 of our special series on technology and the church. We'll show you how some religious organizations are using computers and multimedia to bring new energy into their meetings and services. We'll look at a powerful online business management tool called NetLedger, part of the new Oracle Small Business Suite. And we'll show you how to find the answer to almost any question online, a great research tool for nonprofits called Ask Jeeves. Technology and the church, coming up next on the Computer Chronicles. Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PC to PC, the online computer migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one. Additional support is provided by Upside Events, presenting the Digital Lifestyle Revolution Conference, where people and technology intersect. Hi, and welcome to this special edition of the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee. This is part 2 of our series on technology and the church, looking at ways that religious organizations and other nonprofits can use technology, computers, and the internet to better run their organizations. Last week, we looked at desktop video and web design. This week, we're going to focus on nonprofit business practices, online educational research, and multimedia. And we're going to start by looking at how some religious organizations are actually integrating technology into their services. To do that, we turn to our first guest, Dan Burke, who's Director of Multimedia for the Menlo Park Presbyterian Church. And Dan, actually, you do this stuff. You are a video media specialist with the Menlo Park Presbyterian Church here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Let's back up from video for a second. We'll get back to video in a minute. You're using just lovely things you've shown me before, like graphics and PowerPoint presentations and things to really enhance a church service. First of all, give us an example of the kinds of things you've created for your church, Dan.
Well, from this example, basically, I've prepared for you. I put together a compilation of some things that we use on a regular basis and sort of put it together in a custom show made just for this segment.
Okay, so what are we looking at here?
Basically, this is a stained glass window from the interior of our church that has been photographed. And
so you took a digital photograph of the windows?
Actually, we do now, but these are actually from 2 or 3 years ago.
Really? So you can take an old-fashioned film photograph.
Scan them into a scanner, pump them into the program, and go on. And then because it kind of keeps the continuity of the interior of the church alive and whatever. And then we'll have our songs that people will be singing with. The worship band will be leading.
So that you'd actually be projecting these things during the service. 2
big screens right up in the front of the stage and a lot of monitors, 20 monitors in and around the building or whatever. And then basically we'll blur out the back of the slide so you can read the words better and all. And then we'll just, as the choir and as the worship leaders are leading, we'll just funnel through the songs. And then we got to make sure we get our tag up at the very end in relation to licensing agreements and all that type of stuff. We'll go to maybe a default slide, maybe there's a moment of silence, or there's an idea where there's some sort of announcement in transition. Then we'll move on to perhaps on Saturday night we have a children's program.
And you actually created this whole thing yourself too, because that's very nice.
Well, this is actually out of it's actually out of a book illustration they will be reading from. And we would put maybe the illustrations from the book up on the big
But you were able to capture that, put it inside the computer presentation again, projected on the big screens.
Yes. And this is all scripted and planned for the rest of the night. Perhaps another transition, and then we'll maybe get to the scripture reading section. We'll have the scripture reference and where it's at, and actually the page number in the Pew Bible if they want to go. And then we'll just have it on front screen for them to read. One nice thing about the way we do this, as you'll notice, we'll lead the reader to the next line of it as it's grayed out in the back. It's good for continuity and keeping the whole scripture section going and moving. And then perhaps we'll have a special section for, this I believe is a church raising in Rwanda. We'll have a special segment where missionaries or some crews will go in there, or maybe an orphan from Rivnoy outside of Moscow named Misho. I've visited him 3 or 4 times. And then perhaps we'll do a Habitat for Humanity in East Palo Alto. These are different segments that the people can bring in and show during their little time slot in the middle. We also have sort of the showcase pieces, which are these choir numbers, and then we'll integrate graphics and song lyrics that relate specifically to the choir as they're singing along. And notice you can change the backgrounds as we've prepared these sort of special template slides that relate to this whole process.
All right, a couple of questions I would have for you, Dan. First of all, explain the benefit of this. I mean, what does this add to your church's service that you've created things like this as opposed to sort of the more old-fashioned, less techie way?
Well, first of all, our program is totally integrated with media, and it's totally scripted, too. There's not much leeway. It's a very tight program, 50 minutes, and everything's written and planned for. And so basically that works well with media. It's hard to do media on the fly and just zip around wherever you want. We have a linear slide presentation. We start at slide A and go to Z. But basically people get used to actually using the big screens and the imagery as what they're following for the service.
That's what I'm asking. What kind of reaction do you get from the members of your church about this? They say, boy, I like this, it's better, it makes it more exciting, it makes it more interesting, what?
Well, now they're totally used to it. Without it, they're looking for it. But this is a traditional sort of church, and it's been around for hundreds of years. When we first introduced this technology, the older members were not happy. You know, it took a while to ramp them up to
well, I bet the younger members thought this was very cool.
Totally, yeah, normal. The later generations are used to seeing imagery as a part of what we're daily about.
A couple questions I want to ask you on how hard it is to do this. I mean, your church obviously has a video media specialist like you to do this. Many churches don't have that luxury. Again, if I'm just a volunteer or a normal person, what tools were you using, what software were you using to create these beautiful graphics?
Well, primarily we use Photoshop. Photoshop is the industry standard, Adobe Photoshop. For all our image manipulation, we can do filter effects, we can do a lot of
But you mentioned like softening up the backgrounds. Could you like very briefly show us, I know we don't have time to do a whole Photoshop demonstration, but how you would do some of these things, because the effects you created were just lovely.
Well, this last image I just shot up was basically this idea of sort of a background template for this whole series.
Do you have the original picture? We can see how this all started out?
Well, basically it starts out something like this. Basically, this is how the original image that I started from. Okay, and then basically through a series of cutting and pasting in different parts of, like for example, this image.
Okay, so that was the picture, and then you took that and made it into this lovely background.
And I chopped off part of this one, and then I chopped out another part of this background and put it in. These parts of this picture will actually be integrated with the rest of the presentation in different sections, so it kind of makes the whole presentation consistent.
Yeah. Now, Dan, some people think Photoshop is a very difficult program to use. This is like a baby version of it that people could use that isn't quite so complicated.
Yeah, Adobe Photoshop Limited, LE. The LE versions are cheaper, and they're...
How much does it cost to buy that?
Geez, off the top of my head, I'd say under $200 probably, something like that.
And a normal person could figure out how to use that.
Yeah, it takes a time to ramp up. A lot of people have some hard time with the interface.
But you don't have to be a graphic artist to figure this out. All right, finally, in terms of the presentation itself, what kind of software do you use there? Is it like PowerPoint or something like that?
Well, actually, we're using a program called Astound, and we're actually in the process of looking for new software. We're at a Mac platform-based church, and there's not a whole lot of Mac presentation out there beside PowerPoint. And actually, we named it Really Clean Dissolve. So we actually used Astound because it was very stable for many years. Now that the company's gone out of business, actually, we're in the...
You're moving into PowerPoint.
Well, actually, no, we're in the process of looking for a whole new series of softwares out there. And there's a whole, there's maybe 15 companies that actually market to churches specifically.
All right, Dan, just to sum up again, what is the value in doing all this? What does it add to your church service?
Well, basically, the people, it's integrated fully now with what the people expect on Sunday morning. And they want to see it, they need to see it.
It's more engaging.
And it actually reinforces what message is, is trying to be taught or shown for each section.
Dan, thank you very much.
Sure.
One of the biggest problems for any nonprofit organization, religious group, or community association is dealing with the day-to-day business problems of running the organization, paying the bills, keeping track of donations, dealing with staff and volunteers. And the newest trend in solving that kind of problem is the use of an online application rather than the old-fashioned box of packaged software. Here to show us one such solution is Stephen Wolf of NetLedger, now part of the new Oracle Small Business Suite. And we're talking about managing your money. I mean, if you're running a church, you're running basically a small nonprofit business. You have to keep track of money in and money out and all those kinds of things that anybody else has to worry about. NetLedger's approach is interesting. Let me sort of back up for a minute now. Many people may be using old manual systems, right, where you just wrote in the numbers on those big green sheets of paper, and you hope the adding machine, you hit the right buttons on the adding machine. That's not a good idea, right?
No, I mean, manual systems, paper can get lost, moved around, that sort of thing, plus all the adding up that you have to do and the mistakes that can be made while you're
Now,
trying to
the
do
next
that.
step, people will go out and buy maybe something like QuickBooks, right? They're off-the-shelf packages you can say, hey, you can do all that. What's the upside and downside of doing that?
Well, great products. They're inexpensive. They're very, very easy to use, which is nice for a small business person or a church who doesn't have an accounting background. But the downside is, keeping up with the current versions, buying the upgrades
and
setting it up for multi-user.
and it's locked into one particular machine, et cetera. Now, you guys at NetLedger, as we just saw, have a web-based application for doing all the accounting tasks you would have to do in a business. You have it up here, actually. Now, how do I actually use NetLedger?
Well, this is actually the NetLedger site that you go to on the internet, which is netledger.com. And to set up a company, you just click on Sign Up Now. And it brings you to a sign-up page. And all they have to do here is fill out the information on this screen and click Submit. Now, I have a company set up already that I'm going to log into to show you what it all looks like.
Let's go to the demo account you set up. So again, it's password protected, so again, you can control who gets into this.
Right, an important thing, of course, is that only authorized people get into the system, and you don't have people that aren't supposed to be in looking at your books, that sort of thing.
Right. So even though it's online and on the internet, you have security.
Yeah, security is an important factor, and it's actually one of the things that businesses ask us a lot about, as you could imagine, when they're thinking about going online. But we're able to do things like get a very powerful and secure database, Oracle, that small businesses normally can't get. But since we're hosting that application for them, we have the powerful computers, the powerful database.
And ironically, in some ways, being online is more secure than having this stuff sitting on your hard drive.
Well, exactly right. When I talk to individuals or organizations and say, do you make backups of your data every day? Do you store the backup off-site? Those are things that they don't normally do. And, if some emergency happens, a fire or that sort of thing.
It's all sitting. All right, so let's see the different kinds of things we can do. Again, we don't have a lot of time, obviously, to do this, but I see some of the tasks, the financial tasks we can do there. Walk us through them, Stephen.
Right. This is organized around the tasks that you work on. I'm going to go very quick just through these tabs. There's a home page, which is where most people work, and they can set up shortcuts to the tasks that they normally do. There's a transaction tab, and that has all kinds of transactions on here. A reporting tab where you go to do just that, get the reports and analyze information. And then a list section where you create, set up your members and that sort of thing.
So let's go through a couple typical things. I mean, you have to write checks if you're running a church, right? Can I actually create checks inside NetLedger?
You can do it a couple of ways. You can record checks you've already handwritten, and you can also generate checks right out of the system. I choose Write Checks right off of the screen, and I get a form that's familiar to me. I can pick who I'm writing the check to off of my list, and you'll notice it fills everything out for me. And then I just type in the amount, and then what account it's going to go to. So this is where the expense is, and we'll just say it's this.
Now, one thing that you want to keep track of if you're a church is your income, the donations that are coming in from various members. Can you track all of that inside something like NetLedger?
Right. Well, when you set up these accounts, you can set them up to match what you need for your type of organization. Donations, of course, are a common type of thing that is being tracked.
So you could have a record for each individual member and be able to track those donations, for example?
Exactly right. And I can show you actually on recording donations if you want how some of that would work. There's really a couple of ways that people would do this. One is I'm recording donations that really a group of people gave me, maybe the collections from the day. And I'm not recording it to an individual person, and maybe I just set up an area called collections, and this is where I'm taking all of the information in. And the method of it was cash, and then I can say, this was my Sunday collections. I can choose that right from the selections down here, enter the amount, and hit add, and it will record the transaction for me automatically. So now that's affecting my books, showing what I got collections from that type of...
Two other questions. We show sort of basically money in, money out. Sometimes you have to report to your board or something as to how the business is running. What kind of reports, what kind of graphic representations could I get out of NetLedger?
A couple of neat things that people can use. One is we have a number of graphs that give you a snapshot of what you're looking at. Let's just look at income, for example, right now. And I can say I want to look at a pie chart, and let's just look at the fiscal year to date. And I'll hit refresh. And I can see in here where all my income has come from. I see most of this is coming from my Sunday collections, but I have donations to a roof fund, a building fund, general fund, that sort of thing. So I get quick snapshots. If I wanted to analyze it further, there's detailed reports that I can run, again, with just the click of a button. And that will show me by individual member what they've donated if I've recorded it that way, or my total
Almost
collection.
out of time, Stephen. Just a couple of quick questions. This is all, we've been live on the web here. This is all web-based. What does it cost me to use something like NetLedger?
It's $9.95 per month per user, so it's very inexpensive. There's nothing that the user has to buy to put onto their computer, nothing to install. And that's important for one of the things you talked about earlier. If a board member needs to look at information, they can do that right from their home. They don't need to have special software.
Web-based, so you can access it from anywhere. And you don't, it doesn't matter whether you have a Mac or a PC, as long as you have an internet terminal.
Right. Another important point for nonprofits, where a lot of times the equipment might be donated. And for them to try to focus on only having a certain type of equipment.
It doesn't matter what kind of machine you have. Stephen, great. Thank you very much. It's NetLedger. If education is part of the mission of your community organization or religious group, then you really need to know something about using online research tools. Now, a lot of these internet research tools are quite complicated to use, but there are others out there that are very easy to navigate. And one of the easier to use internet research tools is a site called Ask Jeeves. Let me introduce Jenny Dabusco, who is our next guest. She's Director of Research and Analysis for Ask Jeeves, or ask.com, which is the actual website. Welcome, Jenny. And I want to actually ask you a question. We just had a question before, which is a great example of how you can use the web to find answers to questions. Like Michael Slaughter was mentioning, well, many times you have a question, just go to a website here or there. One of the questions was, how do I find out information about what kind of digital video camera to buy, or the specs, or the parameters I ought to know? How would you use something like your site, for example, to answer that question?
Well, our site is perfect for a question like that, because we're the question answering service on the web.
Okay.
So what I would do is I'd go to Ask Jeeves, ask.com, and I'd type in, what should I know about digital cameras?
So you can just type in a normal English language sentence. You don't have to know any geek stuff.
Exactly. Just type in the question as you would just phrase it to me.
Okay.
And you press that Ask button, and you see that Ask Jeeves brings up a whole group of questions, such as where can I learn about digital cameras, what should I know about digital cameras before buying one, product reviews, and where you can buy one online, as well as what does the technical term mean.
Sure. And suppose you would click through. I mean, where do I actually get the answer?
Well, these answers are selected by editors at Ask Jeeves.
So there's real human beings that have actually looked at this
Exactly.
stuff. It's
and
not
they found
some
the best
machine.
answers.
Okay.
Exactly. And they found great answers. And so here it looks like it takes us to short courses, and it's the digital photography resource for over 2 million visitors a year. And it's a series.
And so there's more than you'd ever want to know about how to buy a digital camera.
Exactly.
All right, let's back up a little bit and talk about the general notion for people who may not be familiar with searching the web to get answers to questions. We'll get back up before As.com and Ask Jeeves. I mean, there are search engines, right? So people would go to a Yahoo or an Alta Vista to ask a question, but you'd have to use sort of funny language to do it. And the problem is you might get a million responses, right?
Exactly.
Would you just give us an example of the typical search environment on the web?
Prior to Ask Jeeves?
Yeah.
Okay, so prior to Ask Jeeves, there were two types of search engines that people would use. You could use either a standard technically based search engine, where what that search engine does, like Alta Vista, as you said, would do is it has a crawler that would go out and try to find web pages.
But this is just all a machine going out and searching
all
keywords.
machine, exactly.
So you don't know what's going to come back, and it may be totally the opposite of what you're looking for.
Exactly. And then the second type of search engine that existed were directories. Now what a directory was is it's a search engine that has editors, but what these editors do is they go out and find web pages and then index them under categories. So digital cameras might be found under an index that's computers, peripherals, cameras, digital.
So when you say editor, a person
Yes.
has organized. So that one, like a Yahoo, for example. Is that right?
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. Now let's talk about Ask Jeeves and the approach you guys take. So maybe we can go back to the start there. Let's talk about a situation in a church environment where maybe you want to do some research for a sermon you're preparing for the weekend. You got to dig up some statistics. Maybe a teacher in a Sunday school environment trying to prepare a lesson plan for a student. So let's focus it on the context of these sort of religious type topics. How would I go to Ask Jeeves and get an answer to a question? I mean, suppose I were interested in I don't know, right now, the history of the Holy Land or the conflict in the Middle East, we're concerned about that, and I want to get some background so I can include it in my sermon or include it in my class that Sunday. How would I do that?
Well, with Ask Jeeves, you would go straight to the site and phrase your question exactly as you wanted. So history of the Holy Land.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I type in, where can I learn about the history of Jerusalem?
Okay.
And what will come back is a series of questions. You see this top question. When I hit on this bar here, it brings up a series of related topics. So you can see that it's where can I learn about the history of Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. It also has the history of the State of Israel, Declaration on the Establishment, the Gaza Strip, Jordan-Israel Peace Treaty, etc. We've also got the history of the country Israel, resources from a encyclopedia on it. And down here, we also have our direct hit engine has come up with some others, such as main events in the history of Jerusalem timeline.
All right, now suppose I wanted to be like more current, like President Bush is right now talking about faith-based community service programs, and I want to talk about that in a sermon. How could I dig up the latest information that's related to that topic?
Well, with Ask Jeeves, well, I like to think of search engines as being librarians that are, when you look on the web, it's a gigantic library, and so you might go to, say, Ask Jeeves as a librarian because he's easy to talk to, and he usually finds what you're looking for. For that question, you might want to consider going to a librarian who specializes more in news, like maybe a cnet.com. But if we were to do it on Ask Jeeves, I type in, where can I learn about George W. Bush's policies? See what kind of responses he gave back. And you can see that what he's good at doing is he's coming up with information about him as a president.
And these are all, all the different sources there you might go to.
Exactly.
Well, what about something more directly? Suppose I'm looking to buy certain kinds of Christian books or videos or artwork. Could I use Jeeves for that?
Exactly. Where can I buy Christian videos?
Okay.
And Jeeves searches through and he finds where can I find videos. He's not exactly finding Christian videos, but when I go down here, it's like he's got
bringing
a
Bible
whole
study
score
and
of them.
video together, children's Christian videos, sure. So I mean, just in a second, you can get answers to these complicated.
Exactly.
We mentioned children. Let me ask you, sometimes we're concerned about children doing this kind of thing and going on the web directly. What would happen if a child goes there and says, who is God?
Oh, well, we actually...
What would happen if they asked a question?
I love esoteric questions on Ask Jeeves. Who is God? So if a child was to go to Ask Jeeves and ask who is God, we come back, and it turns out that that's a question that a lot of our users ask.
Wow.
We get over 4 million queries a day, and this is one of the ones that we get. And an editor has gone through, searched the web, and found an answer, and the answer that she selected, and I happen to know this editor, she majored in comparative religions at Berkeley, she's come up with an answer where it says different religions, different beliefs. And there what you get is what faith groups believe about deity. So who is God? Well, if you believe that there is no God, then that would fit under atheism, that we cannot know whether God exists, agnosticism, et cetera.
Suppose I want to do a Bible research, Jenny. What does the Bible say about whatever, marriage or love or education?
Okay, that's another question we get quite often. So what does the Bible say about love? Type that in. And what I get is I get a question with a blank box. Click your mouse, put the cursor over there, and I'm going to type in, what does the Bible say about love? And Jeeves is going to go to its answer, and it's looking it up. There we go.
All kinds of
So it's gone to a site that does
That's
Bible
great.
searches.
All right, so to sum up, the site is ask.com, and Jeeves is the virtual person out there to answer your questions.
Exactly.
Jenny, thank you so much. That's it for part 2 of our special series on technology in the church. We'll have the conclusion of our series next week. If you have any questions about anything you saw on this week's program, please check out our website at computerchronicles.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Stuart Chaffee. Hope we'll see you here again next week. Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by PC to PC, the online computer migration service from PC First, moving files, applications, and preferences from your old computer to your new one. Additional support is provided by Upside Events, presenting the Digital Lifestyle Revolution Conference, where people and technology intersect.
To purchase a videotape copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-310-7850. Please specify the show number and the topic.
Next week on the Computer Chronicles, the conclusion of our special series on technology in the church. We'll show you some simple networking products that can bring added efficiency and cost savings to your organization's business operations. We'll take you to the Rock in Roseville, California, billed as the world's first interactive church. And we'll show you how to add music to your group's events or educational programs with the amazing Vancouvering piano. Technology in the church coming up next week on the Computer Chronicles.